Yo, what up? We got the top 5. That's right. You counted it. YouTube algorithms love it. They love their top 5s. Top 5 most overrated artifacts, according to Gabriot. Now, one thing you'll notice about these 5 that I've chosen here, none of them are actually bad artifacts. I'm just going to say that. Well, I think one of them is actually bad. The number one that I'm going to choose. But they're not like untakeable. There's definitely worse artifacts in this list than the ones that I'm going to choose. However, the thing is, most of the bad artifacts in this game are just bad enough that pretty much everybody recognizes it pretty straight away that they're bad. So they don't really rate them high anyway. The ones I'm choosing are ones that, in my opinion, I subjectively just kind of observe that they're rated pretty high when I don't think they're that good. I just definitely don't think they're as good as people kind of make them out to be. The way I'm judging it, again, is completely subjective. I do a lot of the community challenges and whatnot, and I observe trends and what people will choose over other things, and these are the ones that I guess just leave me scratching my head the most in how much people will reach for them when I don't think they provide any value on most runs compared to what you could have chosen instead, generally. Now, having said that, I did order them, I think, from lowest to highest in terms of which ones I think are, in their terms of overratedness. And the first one on this list is probably the best artifact out of the 5, I think, which is Cleansing Water. You'll find me taking this all the time, so it's not like it's an untakeable artifact. In fact, it's one of the most takeable artifacts in the game. I think my main problem with this and why it does just sort of make the bottom of the list here is sort of just, I guess, how I think people... It's just the level of impact I think that people think that it has on a run is way lower than they actually think. If I were to compare it to probably the most comparable artifact to it is Sigiled Seaweed. That is, where is it? Right here. So, they're very similar, right? 50% chance to clear something that you'll basically find in most fights, a buff or a ability. If I compare them though, there's only one enemy in the entire game that I think clearing a buff on it is super impactful, and that would be the stealth boss, right? The Crystal Cloak, Ring 5 boss that stealths for like a lot of stealth. My argument there is, sure, but once you have enough experience in this game, you really don't have issues with Crystal Cloak. I know that might be mind-blowing to maybe newer players that might be watching this video, but I'm telling you, I haven't lost a Crystal Cloak in ages. Just very simple preparation for it, is going to leave you not needing Cleansing Water. I can just as easily say Sigiled Seaweed could counter a boss like Living Armor, but in the same vein, I would never evaluate those really toward the value of the artifacts, because those two bosses are so incredibly easy that if you're losing to them, you got other issues to address. But when I compare, once you get kind of to, higher win rates of play, you start to expect certain things out of your artifacts if you want them to truly be impactful, and I just don't really see that out of Cleansing Water, whereas I'll see that out of Sigiled Seaweed. Think about what a wave looks like in terms of buffs versus abilities. Usually a wave will only have one unit really with an ability, other than on Divinity you'll have something like waves where there might be multiple Harvesters of Death or whatnot. But, realistically, the way buffs work is it'll be Rage or Spikes is the most common ones you're going to see, right? And they're going to be basically, for any fight where that stuff is relevant, they're going to be present on every single unit in the wave. And you're not going to clear the whole wave. you're only going to clear a few of them. So it's not like if spikes were an issue for you, if rage was an issue for you, cleansing water only softens the blow. It will never actually counter it. Your chances of actually clearing the entire wave of buffs is so low that like all it's doing is maybe it helps you at the breakpoint or not. And like I said, I take it a lot because it's not worth skipping. It's useful to have this effect, but I just don't think it actually pushes you meaningfully toward surviving or not surviving any particular wave. I just don't think it does. And you know, the difference between like if you're going to die to a wave that the whole wave has spikes, like a divinity wave where 5 enemies have spikes, you probably are still going to die if 2 or 3 of them have spikes, right? Versus all 5. You're not going to get it removed from all 5. And I don't know, there's just not that many buffs where removing this is super impactful, whereas like with the Sigiled Seaweed, removing the effect of the ability from most units to have an ability basically just completely deleted that unit's from effectively from what you're scared of from that unit. Like if I have to face a Darkwing that doesn't have 15 armor to the entire floor and harvests, then I really don't care about that Darkwing. If I have to face a Purifier or an Absolver that can't shuffle Scourges or sap you, like it literally is just nothing to me. Sigiled Seaweed's like effectively just actually hard countering the unit, but Cleansing Water doesn't, like I said, doesn't really hard counter anything other than stealth. If I remove the rage, if I remove the spikes, I guess you could argue spikes boss, mini boss, but I just don't really think this is as impactful as people think. But it's still a good artifact. Don't get me wrong. I still think it's good, but I think people like are frothing at the mouth for this one. From what I see, like it's taken so often over better artifacts that I see when I look at deck lists after I do like a Curse Seed or whatnot. That like I don't know. I really don't think it's that good. To me, it's like the default if all of your choices suck. Otherwise, I'm not taking it. I would never take Cleansing Water over anything that I consider to be a good or great artifact. It just isn't impactful enough. But I'm never skipping it. Whereas I think the rest of the stuff on this list I just straight up skip. So from 4 on, I think are the ones that are even more overrated, I think. So at number 4, this might be a controversial one, but I'm putting Encased Ember there. The problem with this is, in my experience, I can't think of the last time that I took an Encased Ember that the Ember actually did anything for me. Literally anything. You know, there's a lot of ways I see people take this where I just don't agree with it. The first is that they take it speculatively without even a tomb in the deck yet. I don't like that. The upside here just isn't that high. You'd think it would be 5 Ember when a tomb unit dies, but the fact of the matter is Melting Remnant doesn't need Ember. Like, so you already have an artifact that is at odds with itself, and you're completely hoping that it gives you something in the other clan that it can use. But like, seriously, what in Melting Remnant uses Ember? Like, their only X cost is a Wax and Spike, and it hardly makes use of the X cost portion of it, right? 4 flat attack per Ember, ooh-wee. Like, sure, I guess if you have a consume removed Wax and Spike on holdover, maybe Encased Ember makes sense if you have an Endless Tomb on top of that. That's a lot of moving parts, though. Now, I'm not saying that it's always completely useless. I think it makes sense to take, but I think there's a big chicken-egg problem, and whereas some other artifacts where the chicken-egg speculation is worth taking in a lot of cases, like I think Iron Drop Cage, for instance, when you have a Hellhorn, is absolutely worth taking, because you're likely to hit on it. And the upside, if you hit on it, is very easily to realize. But the upside on Encased Ember is just not really there, in my opinion. It's not there in terms of actually ever being able to realize it. Now again, sometimes it makes sense. I can remember once way long ago when an Encased Ember was sick. But that's just the thing. And over 2,000 hours of playing this game, I can think of maybe 1 or 2 times Encased Ember actually was good for me. In reality, you just hardly ever are able to cash in on this. You need an Endless Tomb, or you need holdover, reform. You need the tomb that's actually useful. I could argue that really, in the DLC world, the only tomb, at least by mid to end game, that is relevant is typically just going to be a Molten Encasement. And most of the decks, this one's hard to explain, but just most of the decks that would want a holdover or Molten Encasement just aren't going to need Ember. They just aren't. But yeah, every now and then maybe you get like a One-Horn Tome on Consume Remove or something, or a One-Horn Tome in general that just could use that one-time spike of energy. And in those cases, it's fine, but I see this thing taken fucking all the time. Like, when I can guarantee you, just looking at the deck list by the end, that it actually did nothing for them, and they could have just had something useful. I mean, hell, they could have had a Cleansing Water. I would take Cleansing Water over Encased Ember most of the time, unless I had a huge reason not to. So that's number 4. Number 3, I'm going with Jack Strips. I think this is another one. I mean, I have to imagine every single thing I list here is going to be controversial. If it's not controversial, then I failed in my goal here, because I'm trying to pick 5 things that are generally rated high by people that I think aren't really that good. Jack Strips is definitely one of them. I think Jack Strips, the main reason I don't like it is, especially when people take it mid to late game. Especially in the DLC world, what the hell is dying at 2 damage? Name me that. Spoiler alert, it's nothing. And so you're really taking something that is literally doing nothing for you from mid-game on out. Now, the only time I find it good to take is like Ring 1 or 2. And even then, I think there's usually a better choice that people take this over, like pretty often. But I will say, there are definitely runs where it can do a lot of work in the early game, but even then, like if I see Talos the Pusher, I don't really have huge reasons to take Jack Strips, right? Like it's literally can't kill anything in that in a Ring 3 fight, one of the 6. It's likely, if I predict that I'm going to take early shards, that it's not going to get value, because any single backlaner in the game that gets shard enhanced will not die to Jack Strips. There's a 50% chance that in Ring 1 or 2 you'll get offered an armor trial at some point. And actually, I think it's higher. No, it's 50. But because there's 4 trials, you'll get offered 2 of the 4. And obviously, if that trial's a unit draft, Jack Strips did nothing for you. So even as an early game artifact, we've named a lot of scenarios where it didn't really do anything for you. So it was a completely wasted artifact. And certainly, if you've taken any shards by mid to late game, this is doing nothing for you. The only time it could do anything for you is in the Divinity fight. 50% of the time, you'll have a wave 1 that has like some damage shield. Ooh-wee. Sure, it's fine for that, but it's just not worth it. I would take almost anything on the up here over a Jack Strips mid to late game. I think it's literally just throwing your pick away by taking this. I see people buy this shit in like a Ring 6 trinkets or something, or Ring 7 trinkets even. I'm like, what? Why? Now, there's some exceptions to the rule there. Like, I think if you have a Mortal Entrapment, for example, it's fine to take, because then you're needing some damage for that spell to hit, and then, yeah, that makes sense. But in a general sense, I see this thing taken a lot, and I don't think people really conceptualize the fact that it's actually doing nothing relevant for you almost all the time that you take it. And then, make your bets on what the final 2 here are. If you've watched my runs, I don't think these 2 are going to be a surprise. I don't think they will. The video that came out right before this is going to inspire one of these. Do you think it's going to be number 1 or 2? Well, I'm putting it at number 2. Firestone Housing. I originally wanted to put it at 1, but I couldn't, because you'll see why. But I don't know. This one is just gone down and down and down and down in my evaluation, the more and more I realize just how most of the time it's useless. It seems so good because you think of those times you're able to get like an extra multi-strike or an extra quick on top of your already multi-striking unit or something, but realistically, this will usually do nothing for you in a run, in my opinion. Now, this is going to come down to playstyle, but I'm just going to lay out a bunch of arguments here because I know people love the fuck out of this artifact, and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. First off, I see people take it ring 1 all the time over better artifacts. All the time. We just saw it in the last one. If you may think, oh, ring 1, I got all the time in the world to use these. Not true. It's actually better as a late game artifact. Why is that? Well, first of all, it might make sense ring 1 if you look at the map, and it makes sense to hit all of the Merchant of Steels just naturally on the map. You can refer back to my pathing guide to know what constitutes a good path. But where it goes wrong is if you look at it and you're like, oh, I guess I'm just going to force visit all of the Merchant of Steels. Bad, 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 because you are now probably, just because of this stupid artifact, you're going to give up Hell Vents, Concealed Caverns, Divine Hordes, better shops, like, you name it. You're going to start visiting these steels that have, like, just gold and pyre health next to them. Most likely, just to do a 50-50 roll at multi-strike, because that's what, most of the time, the only thing you're looking for is an extra multi-strike here. And on that note, so already it probably forces you to take a bad path to try to get value out of this thing. It also forces you to... Well, let me go back to the multi-strike point. I mean, it's like you're not really looking to add a large stone. And if you are, often you're like... It might just like make you add a large stone when you shouldn't have as well, right? You're like, I need to get value out of this thing. Okay, I'll add a large stone. When we saw it in that one that I was reviewing where it's like it just hurt the unit to add large stone to it in most of those cases. So, you know, the ideal scenario is that you find shitloads of multi-strikes, you know, high rolling essentially. And in that scenario, I would argue it's just win more. It's win more. It's like the spitting definition of win more. If you already had a multi-strike, you're doing just fine. Do you really need another? I guess in a rare case, that's like the only way to win in some cases, but God, it's so rare that it shouldn't be taken the rate. Like I see this artifact taken over anything in the game. I see it taken over anything. It's like the #1 artifact in people's hearts, I feel. And let's get to another point. So it's kind of win more, right? You kind of have to see a lot of multi-strikes usually to get value. I'm not saying, by the way, that it's not... I won't say that it's a bad artifact, right? I'm not saying that it's bad, unlike the #1 that I actually think is a bad artifact. But that's, by the way, the only reason I put this at #2 and not #1. Like, in true terms of overratedness, this could be the #1 overrated one, but... The problem is it's still like it has its uses, right? But like I said, I think it's much better as a mid to late game artifact because that's the point where you know what you need because you've seen your units. And certain units just kind of do benefit from this. A big example would be like a Horned Warrior. A Horned Warrior wants 3 things. It wants health, and it wants probably quick, and it would like another multi-strike. So, for a unit like that, Pyrestone Housing is great. But for most units in this game, I really don't think Pyrestone Housing is really helping them that much. Especially in the context of, like, you're probably just getting it an extra, like, 25 health or plus 10 damage in most cases. Like, realistically, you're not getting it an extra multi-strike. You have to high roll pretty hard to get, like, you know, enough slots filled that you're getting high value slots out of all those 3. And then the other point, I guess the final point here on Pyrestone Housing is that concealed caverns exist. And concealed caverns a lot of them have very desirable or even just mediocre upgrades that will use a unit's slot. And those caverns most likely come before the point. If you took an early Pyrestone housing, they usually come before the point that you're able to fill that third slot. So, and often you're probably going to have 2 slots already filled. Even if you don't, it's still like kind of wasting it. But the point is, like, often at those concealed caverns, you want all of your upgrades in already. That way you can get the max value by kind of overstacking your upgrade slots. So think like a micro stone, you know, the one that brings it down to 1 pip, or even like a 25 health at the, you know, trade your pyre for one of the 3 benefits event. I always forget the name of it, but anything like that, you know, like, or Sunderstone, right? You're absolutely wanting to take a Sunderstone, the one that adds melee weakness to your strikes. So like, there's enough of those that quite often you just aren't actually able to get the use out of the Pyrestone housing there. I can't tell you how many times that will come up in a run where you have a Pyrestone housing already in hand. I'm telling you, it's very rare I can meaningfully make use of Pyrestone housing. The best case scenario is that you already have a Horn Warrior and you see this and the other choices suck. Kind of goes back, like, I just think that almost always you would have took something else over a Pyrestone housing and it would have been better. Most of the artifacts on this list. Now, before I get to number 1, which if you're if you've been with a crew for a while, I don't think it'll be a surprise to you that I'm picking this as number 1. But what would any good top 5 list be without shoving some more choices in here and giving some honorable mentions? So, first honorable mention, Fossilized Fangs. This one was tough for me to actually put in the top 5 because I don't think generally most people that have some experience in the game, I think most people realize it as being shitty. But there's enough newer players to the game that I still see this thing taken a lot in runs where it makes no sense on, aka most runs it doesn't make sense on. The problem with this is it really only benefits 2 units in the game. It literally only benefits 2 units in the game in the DLC world. You know, pre-DLC, it was pretty good in the Crucibles, but the Crucibles are so bad now that you're just never taking them, and a Fossilized Fang doesn't change any of the problems that exist with those Crucibles. So really all it benefits is Gorge Penumbra and Morsel Maid. It really doesn't benefit anything else. If you have an alloy, you're almost certainly self-infusing it. So you don't need that extra fuel. I guess you could argue a Shadow Eater sometimes, but again, yeah, if you're actually using a Shadow Eater relevantly, which would usually be like an Alpha Eater or alternatively a Thorn Eater, then it's pretty good. But those are very specific scenarios to the point where most runs that you're playing Umbra, I doubt you'll ever want to Fossilize Fangs. I really wish that this thing just said Gorge twice. Or not Gorge twice. Morsels eaten are eaten twice. Then it would be good. It wouldn't even be overpowered. Trust me, it would not be overpowered. It would just be something that makes morsels generally better, adds a high roll to the Umbra, which they need it. Right? They need it. There's no way that that's still more powerful than like a Founding Seal, for example. No fucking way that change would make it more powerful than that. But it'd be like an okay artifact at that point. But as it stands, it's fucking horrible. Like I said, if you don't have any of those specific situations, you have no reason to take this. It does literally nothing for you. And then the second honorable mention is Violeteers. My god, do I see people reach for this one. I see so many people take... You can see them in the process of losing a run with Corrupted Cloud. I guess I could put Corrupted Cloud in there as well, except Corrupted Cloud actually has more use than Vial of Tears. I think the reason I'm putting Vial of Tears here is that people take Corrupted Cloud with the hopes of transforming it to a Vial of Tears. And it's just horrible. Corrupted Cloud actually has itself some benefit in that if you're running like Endless Imps or Tombs, and you don't have a good way to sacrifice them, this is a good way to do it, as long as you can survive the 4 damage to your other units every turn. But this actual healing of 5 is so useless. I can't convey how useless this is to anything outside the most specific of cult, like rejuvenate decks. You would need somehow to have formulated a deck that has like a bunch of Awoken Hollow infused units, like multiple of them on a floor to actually make this make any sense. So what I'm trying to say is it never makes sense to take this. 5 health to your floor is complete trash. This is not equivalent to a Steelworker infusion. And it's hard for me to explain why that is. So you just got to take my word for it, sorry. But healing 5 is not the same as stacking 5 armor. It just isn't. There's so less upside here. But I'm not saying it's never worth... Again, it's never not worth taking. Like, sometimes it will make sense to do this, but I think the price you pay to get there is often a lost run that just didn't need to be lost, and this wasn't going to be the thing that made you win or lose a run, but this is what made you lose the run. You know, taking the Corrupted Cloud made you actually lose the run. When you get an artifact that most likely was not going to be that relevant to you. Just putting that out there. I don't think 5 health to the whole floor every turn on resolve is that good. Especially to go through the toughest rings of the game, 4 and 5, taking 4 damage to everybody. The toughest, easily the toughest rings of the game are 4 and 5. And then obviously Divinity. But 4, 5, and Divinity are the toughest rings in the game. They just are. And final honorable mention, I'm going to say Rationing Scales. I think it's taken quite a lot. Not really factoring in that locking your health to 50 just sucks. There's so many easy ways to just have something go wrong, especially late game, especially in the Divinity fight, where if you could have just had 100 Pyre health buffer, you win the run still by leaking that bad wave where you drew bad, or you just drew bad. Rationing Scales basically, there's some exceptions. Like if I have refracting lenses, it's a lot better because I can actually get my health up during the fight. But in a general sense, if I'm locking my health into 50, I need basically the most solid deck ever to win at the end. Because like I said, one little bad draw here or there can spell 70 Pyre health lost, I would say. If I were to pull a number out of my ass, let's just say 70. It's more than 50. A few hits from some tanks and you're dead. One hit from a Lightwing, a Shadewing. One hit from a Shadewing and you're dead. Maybe that puts it in better perspective. You accidentally can't kill a Shadewing. Whoops, I'm dead. Rationing Scales. Good thing I got that extra gold. Good thing I got that extra gold so I could die to one Shadewing in ring 7, 8, or 9. Sharded up Shadewing, of course, which they're going to be. So yeah, Rationing Scales. Long story short, I think it's overtaken. It's, again, not untakeable. None of the stuff on this list is untakeable. None of the stuff on this list is Teeth of Gold. Everybody knows that something like Teeth of Gold is useless. Even the noobest of noobs can see that this sucks. It's not going to make the list, right? But something like Rationing Scales gets picked enough that it's just an honorable mention. All right, now you've been speculating all day on what the number 1 could be, and it should be no surprise to the OGs, but a big surprise to all the noobs here. Sinner's Salve, number 1, most overrated artifact in the game. This is one I actually think is bad. Not untakeable, but legitimately bad. Legitimately out of all the ones I listed here, the most likely that I'll actually skip for 25 gold. Everybody sees this and it feels so good to have, right? It's a feel-good artifact, but is it actually good for you? I say no. The one situation I will probably be happy to have it in, the only situation is if I get it before Scourge fell. And that I think if it's up against not better artifacts. I'll still take any decent artifact over it, even into Scourge fell. Here's the thing about Scourges. the fact that they hurt you, the fact that they hurt your pyre, is not why they suck. It feels bad, especially if you're going for score. And keep in mind, I'm not talking about daily challenges and shit here. And a daily challenge, sure, Sinner Salve's probably great, but I'm talking, Covenant 25, Divinity fights, 100 to 200 shards. That's what I'm talking about here. So, Sinner Salve, I don't know. There's so many different ways in which this is overrated in my eyes, but let me just first give it the situation where I think it is good, and that's Scourgefell. Because Scourgefell has this awful 2-cost Scourge that does 5 damage to your pyre, and it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable. It just happens. Like, you just have to take it. That's the only situation where I think it's takeable. I'm not even going to say it's desirable, just takeable. Now, back to my original point. The bad part about Scourges is not that they hurt your pyre. Yeah, that sucks. It feels bad, but that's not what's devastating. Unless you're already on like 10 pyre health or something, that's again another reason I might take Sinner Salve. If I know I have Scourge fights coming up, even like something like a Seraph the Diligent, and I'm on really low pyre health, okay, I'll take it. But, low pyre health aside, it's not the bad. The worst part of these things is not that they hurt your pyre if you don't play them. Conversely, the worst part of these is not that by the time you redraw your deck, if you weren't able to play them, that they are still in there. These are the most minor components of why Scourges suck. The major component of why a Scourge suck, or why Scourges suck, is that they kill your initial draw through your deck. That's why they suck. And Sinner Salve does nothing to help with that. Let me list to you every artifact on here that is better than Sinner Salve at actually dealing with with Scourges. Blights are another. There's not enough Blights in the game that, like, there's only candles. There's only fucking Vengeful Shards. I don't care about a Vengeful Shard doing 1 pyre health to me. I could also argue I don't care that much about a Dante's Candle doing 3 to me. Let me list to you examples of things that deal with Scourges better. Well, right off the bat, another one I talked about, Sigiled Seaweed. Way better. If you're getting Scourges shuffled into your deck, it is killing the draw that you could have had that turn. It is much better to just prevent the damn thing from happening in the first place. If this thing read, every time you draw a Scourge or a Blight, you draw an extra card, oh, hell yeah, I'd be all about Sinner Salve. You could even take away this 0-cost portion of it. I'd be taking this left and right. But the big problem is you have a card you want that you're digging for. You have the most crucial parts of the fight are like the first 3 to 4 rings, first 3 to 4 waves. You're trying to set up everything. You're trying to scale. You're trying to get your units down. All of these things, and killing your initial draw through that is devastating. The reason the Penitent fight sucks is because your initial draw through everything is horrible if you cannot deal with those purifiers. And this doesn't do a damn bit of good at helping you with that. Sinner Salve. It does do a bit of good? Sigiled Seaweed. 50% of every wave, you just completely silenced that purifier. And that is 2 to 3 times that you basically prevented your draw from getting fucked 2 to 3 times per Sigiled Seaweed hit. You don't know how many times you prevented your draw from getting hit with Sinner Salve? 0. Literally 0. It's impossible. Only if you redraw did it matter. But by then, the fight has been decided. The fight has been decided by the time you redraw your deck. That's just how it is. There are rare cases where that's not the case, but 99% of the time it is the case. The fight has been decided by the time your deck got drawn through. So Sigiled Seaweed, Even the shitty concussive coal's shitty artifact, right? I didn't put this on the overrated because nobody likes it. It's not that good, but guess what? It's better. It's still better than Sinner Salve. It is. Like, it will daze, even though it doesn't daze them for 3 of the waves, it does daze them 50% of the time in the first wave, and it prevents your draw from getting fucked. Infinitely better than Sinner Salve. Plus, it can still daze, like a collector, for example, so allowing you to get it. You might have a rare deck that sets up bottom that would benefit from this, and it still stops things from like Light Wings or Mark of Invasions from doing as much damage to you as they might have normally. All these things are way more useful than a Sinner Salve. I would definitely take Concussive Coals over Sinner Salve, even into Scourgefell. Even into Scourgefell, I would do that. But yeah, that just kind of illustrates why this, to me, is the #1 most overrated artifact. I see people kind of similar to Cleansing Water. They're just frothing at the mouth to get Sinner Salve. They love Sinner Salve, and I'm just like, why? It does nothing. It doesn't do anything. I'm telling you, it doesn't do anything relevant. It doesn't. If you were going to die to the damage of those Scourges were going to do, like, sure, it happens every now and then. Again, in over 2,000 hours of playing this game, I can think of 3 or 4 runs where that was relevant. But my god, this is the one. This is the one. I will take 25 gold on it. If it's like Sinner Salve and, I don't know, Token of a Traitor mid to late game, and it's not Scourgefell, and it's, I guess, not Diligent. I mean, I see people take this. They spend money on it, even if they don't even see a Scourge boss in their future. They're like speculatively taking it for like Penitent or something, and I'm just like, why? Or the 50-50 on Divinity that you get the, the Scourge Shuffler mini boss. But even then, it's like, it's not helping you. It's not stopping the Scourge from killing your draw. It's not stopping the Blight from getting shuffled into your deck. It's doing none of these. You know what is stopping that? Sigil Seaweed's stopping all that. But I digress. I think I've made my point on why I think Sinner Salve is bad. It's just bad. This one is the one of these 5 I think is a bad artifact. Not untakeable, but bad. Like, yeah, it barely edges out 25 gold in some scenarios, but my god, I just don't get it. I don't get it. Like, I'll just keep going in circles. Like seriously, like, I gotta hammer this point home. The thing that makes Scourges suck, I mean, think about Ring 2, right? Think about Ring 2. Ring 2 is a great example. Probably the hardest Ring 2 wave are the Scourge Shufflers. The Scourge Shuffler wave. I think by far they're the hardest Ring 2 wave. Those Scourges don't even hurt you, and you don't even probably redraw your deck in that fight. I don't think you do, especially if you didn't deal with those Scourge Shufflers. So what good is it to play those Scourges out? It's not good at all. It didn't do shit for you. There's so many ways to deal with Scourges, and this is the worst way to do it. And I'd argue it just doesn't deal with them. It just doesn't deal with them. It's not even an answer to them. Alright, so that's it. And I probably should, for parity's sake, in the coming days, do a underrated list too, because I got some ideas there. Definitely have some ideas there. There are some others I thought of doing an honorable mention on, like Collection of Tales, but then I thought about it, I'm like, Collection of Tales is just kind of okay. I think it's definitely overrated, but I don't even think it's like making the honorable mention list. But yeah, that's my list. That's my list. Does my list suck? Let me know. I know I had to have angered everybody with it, because I tried to choose, 5 of the most beloved artifacts that just suck. They suck, people. They suck. Pyrestone Housing sucks. Sinner Salve sucks. Jackstrip sucks. Encased Ember sucks. Cleansing Water, it sucks. It sucks. You know what? I was gonna maybe give some benefit of the doubt to it, but honestly, it sucks. It just isn't that impactful. It just isn't. All 5 of them suck, and all of the honorable mentions suck too. Fossilized Fangs, you suck. Violeteers, you suck. Rationing Scale, you're horrible. All right. I'm not angry, I swear. I'm just passionate. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.